Are you thinking about moving to rural California? Did you watch our best rural towns in the Golden State video? If you did, we're looking at the other side of the California dream today. That's right, we're looking at the worst rural towns in California. Some people may be shocked at this, but California has plenty of good and bad rural towns. Some of the states that we've done lately have had less than 10. We just couldn't get 10 really great towns or 10 really bad ones. California has enough to do probably 3 or 4 videos of 10. It's a big state, it only makes sense. More and more people are moving to small and rural towns to retire or work remotely. There's a lot of great places in California. Those towns aren't on this list. The towns you're about to see, I'm sure, have plenty of great people. They just have enough not so great stats that help get them on a worst list. You should probably think twice or do a lot of research before you move there. Get it? Got it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Huron, California. Huron sits about an hour south of Fresno in what is known as the Central Valley, which is a valley in the center of California, like the name suggests, where a lot of farming is done and rural towns exist. Most of the towns in the Central Valley wouldn't be considered great places to live, like Huron. This is the type of town you move to when you like really hot summers and are willing to roll the dice on water and air quality. Huron has a livability score of 42. If you remember, I said if it's in the 80s, it's great. If it's in the 90s, it's probably a gated community. When you get into the 70s, it's middle class, blue collar type thing. When you start getting below 65, it starts to suck. When you get into the 50s, it sucks. And here we are at 42. They have a population of 6,821 residents. The good news is the cost of living is 3% below the national average. Housing is 34% below the national average. That is outstanding for California. Now, where it really starts to suck is their crime rate. It's 9% below the national average, which is good. What's bad is their violent crime rate is 198% above the national average. About 39% of their residents live below the poverty line. That puts them about 158% above the national average. The median household income here is $25,321. That's 54% below the national average. Now, a lot of their crime might have to do with the harvest season. The population swells to over 15,000 due to the influx of the workers. Town of Huron was actually founded in 1888 as a water stop along the Southern Pacific Railroad's western route. Number 9, AVENAL, California. AVENAL is another Central Valley town, and it sits about the midway point between Los Angeles and San Francisco, around an hour inland from the coast. It is just south of Huron and a little over an hour south of Fresno. Back in the 1940s, this was an oil boom town. They had 3 different oil companies drilling there for a while, and that employed most of the residents. These days, it's pistachios and a prison that pays the bills. This town is home to AVENAL State Prison, just south of town. AVENAL has a livability score of 54. They got about 13,000 residents. I don't know if they count the prisoners. Their overall cost of living is 2% lower than the national average, which is outstanding. Housing is 31% lower. As we've learned, when a place isn't great to live, things are cheap. Their crime rate, again, is lower than the national average. That's outstanding. But their violent crime rate is 105% higher than the national average. About 32% of their residents live below the poverty line, which gets them about 117% higher than the national average. Their median household income here is $35,000, so they're doing better than Huron. If you want to buy a house here, you can get a pretty rundown place for under $150,000, but really if you want something decent, you're going to be looking around $300,000 and up. California. That's what it costs. And I looked it up, and yes, they do count prisoners as part of a local community. So almost 5,000 residents in AVENAL are prisoners. Number 8, Hat Creek, California. Hat Creek takes us out of the Central Valley, sort of. It's just there above Redding, and Redding is kind of the northern boundary of what's considered the Central Valley, and this one's just a little northeast of Redding. And there's not many people living here. This is a small community on, as you guessed it, Hat Creek. This one's up in the hills a bit, so it's kind of a mountain town. And it doesn't look terrible. It's just got some bad stats. Everything in this town is graded an F. They have 1D, which is cost of living. I mean, usually when you got really bad stats, cost of living usually shines. It's like an A+. No, they get a D for that too. Hat Creek is in the hills a little over an hour northeast of Redding in Northern California. They got a livability score of 45. Their population, it's kind of small. It's about 250 residents. That was in 2020. Their overall cost of living is 5% higher than the national average for a mountain town, kind of. That's pretty good. good, really. Mountain towns always are a little bit higher, even if they suck. Housing is about 17% higher, which is kind of good for California. And here's where it gets bad. Their total crime rate is 53% higher than the national average. Their violent crime rate is 59% higher than the national average. And about a quarter of their residents live below the poverty line. The town's economy relies on tourism, fishing, camping, and lodging. This is a great part of California to camp, and there is good fishing up this area. A lot of people will stop here or in this area for a day or two while they're, let's say, doing a big camping trip. Then they'll go up to Mount Shasta area. Number 7, CASMALIA, California. CASMALIA is about 20 minutes into the hills south of Santa Maria, California. If you ever take Amtrak's Coast Starlight north, this is the first town you pass by as you leave the coast to go inland. There's not much to it. The first time I passed by it, I'm all, whoa, was that a town? This little town is surrounded by hills and cows. Yeah, they got tons of cows floating around this place. It doesn't smell great, I'm sure. One of those towns you don't want to be eating dinner in when the wind shifts. CASMALIA has a population of just 140 residents. Their livability score is 53. Now, their overall cost of living is 5% above the national average, which it's California, and you're not terribly far from the coast, so that makes everything expensive. But the good news is their housing is 9% below the national average. If you look at the houses, you kind of know why. The crime rate here is 58% above the national average, and their violent crime rate is 64% above the national average. Their poverty level is even with the national average. That's good. Median household income here is $71,000. Someone's got to be making some serious money here, and it raises everyone else's average. CASMALIA is a Native American term for it is the last. If you want to buy a house here, they don't have anything for sale, but last year they sold a couple homes for under $150,000 that were basically shacks. And then in April of 2022, they sold a pretty nice home for $380,000. CASMALIA is a Superfund site, meaning it's toxic. By 1985, over 50 truckloads a day of toxic waste were being dumped in CASMALIA. Respiratory disease and other ailments began to surface among nearby residents. The dump site was identified as the likely cause of the health issues. Number 6, CABAZON, California. CABAZON is out in the middle of the desert in Riverside County, California. If you grew up in Los Angeles and drove out to Palm Springs or Desert Hot Springs, something like that, you pass by this place, and you know you're passing by it because they got these giant dinosaurs off the side of the road, and an Indian casino right across the road. At least they called them Indian casinos back then. Now it's called Morongo Casino Resort and Spa. When I was growing up, you'd drive by there in big letters, Indian Bingo. And this sign was huge. It like glowed and made the whole area look like daylight. CABAZON used to be a great place for retirees, not so much anymore. Sometime in the 90s, the stats for the area took a big turn. They have a livability score of 45. Now, the city only has a population of about 4,000, and it's losing, so by the time you watch this, it could be well below 4,000. The overall cost of living here is still 3% above the national average, because you got that sweet Indian casino across the way. I'm sure that raises the cost of living a little bit. The housing is 14% below the national average, so that's decent. And their crime rate is 14% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is 18% above the national average. 32.6% of the residents here live below the poverty line. You know, the stats aren't as bad as some of the other ones on this list. They're just out in the middle of the desert, and it sucks. If you want to buy a house here, don't. Matter of fact, have your medication checked if you're thinking about it. If you want to buy a home in CABAZON, it's gonna probably run at least $400,000 to get something that's livable. Anything below, let's say, $300,000, probably at some point manufactured street pharmaceuticals. If not, it looks like it probably did. So this one's a first for this channel. There's no footage of Ruth. Absolutely none. Ruth is like that uncle you have that refuses to get on the internet. I'm not getting on the internet. That's how the government gets you. That's how Ruth is. There's no footage, there's no pictures, just a satellite view. Weird. Oh, and if this is the first time you're seeing my face, I am not 20 and live in my parents' basement. Number 5, RUTH California. RUTH California is in Northern California on the south end of Ruth Lake. It's really on Mad Creek south of the lake. This place is out in the middle of nowhere and there's not much to it. Matter of fact, they only have 184 residents. This place is so far out in the sticks, there's no photos of it online. This is as far as the Google Street View car went. They got to about this point and said, nothing to see here, and turned back around. I'm not even kidding. Like I said, Ruth has a population of just under 200 residents, and their overall cost of living is 21% above the national average. Housing is 41% above the national average, but you probably never move here, so that really doesn't matter. Their total crime rate is 56% above the national average, and their violent crime rate is 62% above the national average. Almost half the population here lives below the poverty line. It's actually 42.4% of their population, and the average household income here is almost $13,000. It is roughly 5 hours south of the Oregon border. Make sure you stay till the end because you get to see a wealthy town that actually made a worst of list. Number 4, Desert Center, California. Desert Center is the type of place you move to when your life ambitions are to watch TV and eat stuff you bought at Walmart. That's about all you could do here besides get a nice sunburn and clean dust out of your eyebrows. Desert Center sits between Palm Springs and Blythe on the 10 freeway in the middle of the frickin' desert of California. They don't even have a truck stop at this place. There's no place to pull over here and get gas, something to drink, nothing like that. They got historic Desert Center Cafe, and judging by the boarded up windows and post-apocalyptic cafe sign, I'd say they're closed. Desert Center has a livability of 59, which is not bad for this list. They have about 189 residents, and their overall cost of living is 1% lower than the national average. Bravo, Desert Center. Housing is 41% lower than the national average. If you want to move there, looking on Zillow, the little community that's just outside of where Desert Center is, where most people live, they got a little man-made lake there, and they're selling homes. They go for $160,000 for a mobile home, or a legit home, which doesn't look the greatest. It's going for almost $600,000. They had a price cut last April for $140,000. Now it does come with 10 acres, but at one point they were asking for $700,000 for this place. Their total crime rate is 72% above the national average, and their violent crime rate is 79% above the national average. 33.9% of their residents live below the poverty line. A solar project was approved for this area. It was 2,600 acres of solar panels. It's in the middle of the desert. Great place for them. But a lot of the locals disagreed with the move. It's like, what are you worried about? You're worried it's going to bring in a bad element or something? It's solar panels in the middle of the frickin' desert. Number 3, Grizzly Flats, California. Grizzly Flats. Now there's a name. Sure, California has a grizzly bear on its flag, but it hasn't had a grizzly bear living in the state in decades unless it's in a zoo or some kind of rescue thing. Just last year, Grizzly Flats was basically leveled by the Cauldron Fire, and that's a bummer about living in this part of California. Wildfires are a serious problem. Grizzly Flats sits about an hour and a half east of Sacramento, kind of in between Lake Tahoe and Sacramento, and it's a beautiful area. It's too bad it's got some really bad stats and the possibility of another wildfire whipping through here. Grizzly Flats has a livability of 44. They have a population of just under 900 residents, and their overall cost of living is 5% above the national average. Housing is 10% below the national average, and I think the risk of a wildfire has a lot to do with why it's below. Their total crime rate is 69% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is 75% above the national average. Compared to some of the other ones on this list, they're not doing that bad in the poverty level. Only 18.7% of the population lives below the poverty line. Median household income here is $44,390. This one has a ton of homes for sale. The homes range from a lot that might have been burnt out or not last year from $60,000 for about an acre to homes that are going for $300,000 all the way up to some that are $900,000. And they're beautiful. It's a beautiful area. They just have some bad stats. Number 2, Dobbins, California. Dobbins, California is in Yuba County, California, about an hour and 20 minutes north of Sacramento, not too far from Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe National Forest. If you're living here and want to go in town, you're going to head to Yuba City, which is a lot closer than Sacramento. On Lake Francis, it's a beautiful area. The land is beautiful around here. Again, they just got some bad stats. Their livability score is 56 and a population of 710. Overall cost of living is 18% above the national average. Housing is 31% above the national average, and their crime rate is 39% above the national average. So yeah, they've got a lot of 30s here because their violent crime rate is 39% higher than the national average, and their property crime's 38% above the national average. But when you look at their poverty rate, they finally get out of the 30s. Their 24.8% of their population lives below the poverty line. If you want to move here, it can get expensive. They have some smaller homes and some lots that go for anywhere from $20,000 for a half an acre to $175,000 for 15, but they also have a really beautiful home that I looked at before. I honestly gave this one a thought, and it's going for $1.1 million. That's when I quit thinking about it, when I saw the price tag. But this is a beautiful part of California. It's just too bad it's got those stats. And again, like this whole area, there's a serious chance of running into a wildfire, or a wildfire running into you. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link down below. Head over there, watch some videos, give some a big thumbs up, and give this video a big thumbs up. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, GEYSERVILLE, California. I was a little surprised to see this one on this list. The stats are not flattering. I've been to Geyserville. It's been a couple decades, but I thought it was a great little place, and it still looks nice. Its stats just don't. It's about 2 hours west of Sacramento, above San Francisco, not too far from the coast, near Stewart's Point. Kind of a cool place. It has the Russian River flowing right by town, which is cool. Russian River is a nice river. A lot of people that have to work in the Bay Area will move north of there, in Sonoma, Roseland, places like that. Geyserville might be a little too far north, but I'm sure some people still do it. They've got wineries around here. It's not a bad place. Let's look at the stats. Their livability score is 48. Their population is about 975 residents. Their overall cost of living is 55% above the national average, and housing is 119% above the national average. Their total crime rate is 16% above the national average, and their violent crime rate is 20% above the national average. Now here, they're not doing bad in poverty. It's actually 11%. Not bad. And their median household income is about $56,000. That's 2% higher than the US average. But this is like a small restaurant, bed and breakfast, and winery type place. Just doesn't have great stats, and it's expensive. Now, this is why it's on the list, really, because it is so expensive to buy a home here, it kind of makes it get on a worst of list. The typical home here starts off about $1.2 million. Yeah, not even kidding. $1.2 million. And some of them are almost $5 million. I mean, they're beautiful homes and have property and stuff like that. Go on Zillow, check them out. It's amazing. This place is too expensive for the stats that they have. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, and be nice to each other.